Hello delegates, my name is Michael Bindner. Thank you for considering my candidacy for President in Americans Elect. I am running to offer solutions you won't find in any existing party, which is why I am running without first winning electoral office somewhere else. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and have lived in Texas, Minnesota, Ohio, Iowa, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, where I currently reside. My mother's family traces back to the Plymouth colony, with additional inputs from Germany and Norway on her side, and from Luxembourg and the Czech Republic on my father's side, some of them Roma Sinti, hence the mustache. I am currently the principal at the Center for Fiscal Equity, which offers solutions for tax reform, Social Security reform, and health reform to Congress, the administration, and the public. We have a four-part plan which also illustrates why I am not pursuing electoral office in either the Republican or Democratic parties. 1. A value-added tax to fund discretionary civil and military spending, preferably within the context of regional governments under the direction of a regional vice president and regional congressional caucuses. 2. An employee contribution to Social Security, old age, and survivors insurance with a lower income cap, which leads to lower benefits for more well-off retirees. 3. A VAT-like net business receipts tax to fund social services, family support, the employer contribution to OASI, to be credited to each employee equally regardless of their wage level, and health care. An NBRT is used instead of a VAT because it will offer the following offsets for 1. A $500 per child per month tax credit to be distributed with wages rather than at the end of the year with a matching state VAT credit, or NBRT credit, so the total take will be $1,000 per family per child, or per child. If you've got 2 children, $2,000. 2. Health insurance or the direct delivery of health care for employees and retirees, with a public option for the chronically ill, and single-payer catastrophic insurance for employees of firms who don't offer insurance. 3. Individual retirement accounts holding employer voting stock, about 2/3, and shares of an insurance fund of all similar firms, the additional third, with each employee getting the same amount based on the average national wage. And 4. Contributions on behalf of the employee to private educational and social service providers, including private and parochial charter schools, private adult education providers who will pay participants the minimum wage to become literate at the 10th grade level, and private or sectarian mental health facilities treating nonviolent drug offenders and other offenders who are not sane or under the influence when the crime was committed. Participants in adult education will also receive the child tax credit and the same insurance the provider gives to their employees. And the fourth element of my tax plan is a high income surtax on workers, investors, and heirs netting over $50,000 a year for single filers, or $100,000 a year for joint filers, with no inherited asset tax until it is sold. We expect wages will be lowered to the current net wages and are equivalent to the gross wage of $75,000 a year for singles, or $150,000 a year for joint filers. This tax will fund net interest on the debt repayment, especially the Social Security Trust Fund, services for war veterans and their families, and overseas military deployments, which are traditionally funded by deficit spending. A major reason I'm running is to get this plan scored by the Tax Policy Center, who mainly scores viable candidates. And if you support me, I'll be considered a viable candidate. I believe that once this plan is scored, it will be seen as the best thing out there, and I need your support for them to give it consideration. As you can clearly see, this plan does not fit well in any of the existing major or minor parties. No Democrat will ever be allowed to support personal retirement accounts. No Green will ever be allowed to support privatizing any government social service. No Republican or Libertarian will ever be allowed to support taxes on the wealthy. Neither Greens nor Libertarians support overseas military deployments. Nor will any leading Democratic candidate run in Americans Elect, especially not Hillary Rodham Clinton, so as not to be a spoiler for Mitt Romney. No leading Republican, not even Ron Paul, will run either, so as not to throw the election to Obama. Greens and Libertarians fear spoiling less, will most likely run in their own parties, unless no other candidates qualify, in which case Americans elect would be smart to serve as the means for a green libertarian fusion ticket. More likely, someone like me will be the candidate, in which case I expect Americans elect organizers to pull the plug on the whole effort. But still support me anyway, please. My plan for personal accounts for Social Security that fund employee ownership is the next phase of the cooperative economics started by my great-grandfather, Silas Locke Allen, who helped organize the cooperative movement in agriculture, was the first president of the Minnesota Farm Bureau, and helped organize the American Farm Bureau Federation. I hope this plan appeals to rank-and-file workers as well as the agricultural community who knows how well the cooperative system works. I also promise to assist non-cooperative farmers who are the victims of exploited loan arrangements which lock them into shameful factory farm practices. My administration will create a program to buy out such loans and investigate these practices, which, because they require overusing antibiotics, threaten the entire population with bacterial resistance. Someone needs to stop this practice, and I promise to be the one. Why not support Obama? Because he will never do what it takes to get us out of this housing-based depression and wrest the economy away from the masters of the universe on Wall Street, either by facilitating more employee ownership and control of industry, or by selling Freddie and Fannie Mae to the Federal Reserve so that they can write down the balances for underwater mortgages and have the servicer adjust the payments. This would allow people who can afford their current payment to sell their houses and buy something worth what they are paying now. This will stop home prices from the prolonged slide, start prices back up, and pull us out of what is arguably another Great Depression. We can't wait for this crisis to work itself out. We need new thinking, the kind available in Americans Elect. My resume is clearly transpartisan. In my last term at Loras College, where I graduated in 1984 with a political science degree, I interned for Senator Roger Jepsen, Republican from Iowa. After earning my Master of Public Administration degree from American University in 1986, I served as a presidential management intern as a cost analyst for the Department of the Air Force, with postings at the Pentagon and the Air Force Cost Center in Virginia, and the Flight Dynamics Laboratory and the B-1B Systems Program Office at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. After returning to AU for doctoral school, my friend Paul Strauss recruited me to help him run for the Democratic State Committee, and later for Shadow Senator in the District of Columbia. After working on John Ray's mayoral campaign, I was asked to serve as the Ward 3 Ombudsman for Mayor Marion Barry, and later served working on management reform in the Office of the City Administrator. After backing Kevin Chavis for mayor, I switched to the D.C. Statehood Party, campaign of John Gloucester, later serving as Secretary of Information for the party, and assisting its unification with the D.C. Green Party to become the D.C. Statehood Green Party. After moving to Virginia to get married, I supported Wes Clark for president and later Tim Kaine for governor and Jim Webb for Senate. During this time, I was a stay-at-home dad and wrote Musings from the Christian Left, which was published online and had the alternate title, The Christian Libertarian Party Manifesto. The manifesto got me noticed by the editor of the Free Liberal, where I was contributing editor. Dr. Paul was also had a byline in those days. I also got involved in the Libertarian Reform Caucus. During that time, the Center for Fiscal Equity submitted comments to the President's Commission to Save Social Security and the Tax Reform Task Force. In the last two Virginia primary elections, I supported Mike Huckabee because of the fair tax, which, in compromise with the Democrats, would likely look a lot like my tax plan, and Ron Paul in the recent primary. Due to the incompetence of Sarah Palin, President Obama got my vote in 2008. I heartily condemn using abortion as a political issue while not showing any knowledge of abortion case law, which is essentially what Sarah did. Wanting to repeal Roe v. Wade and not knowing why is a sign of political opportunism, not conviction. I have recently been active in the Virginia Independent Green Party as its Alexandria City Chair. The party is part of the Independence Party of America, which is actually a coalition of former reform parties, which is where Mike Bloomberg would run rather than in Americans Elect. So Mike's money is not coming here. It would go to the Independence Party, and he's showed no hint of running. Much of my career has been spent as a government contractor, often on site at federal agencies, including support for the Small Business Administration and the National Institutes of Health, doing SAS programming, for the Federal Aviation Administration doing operations research, for the Environmental Protection Agency running the Imported Vehicles Hotline, for the Department of Labor as a researcher desk officer for the H-1B Technical Skills Training Grant Program, for the DOL Office of Job Corps as an assistant asset manager, and as a contract administrator for the Department of Energy, and as a proposal coordinator for the Graduate School USA, which serves federal training needs. With all the experience I have as a contractor in the public sector, I can never run as a straight-up green candidate. Government does not work well enough to give it too much to do. Relying on private economy, however, means too much does not get done. My government experience has taught me that the government is too big to manage as one organization. For that reason, I propose appointing 7 regional vice presidents, with Congress creating 7 regional caucuses in each house to legislate on local matters, which such legislation deemed passed by each body. While this does not require a constitutional amendment to do, enacting a regional value-added tax will. Such a tax will allow some regions to offer more government by passing a higher rate, while others will enact a lower rate and cut back on discretionary spending, including local defense bases. Bringing finance closer to the people with an in-your-face receipt visible VAT will be the one thing that will break our addiction to government spending. Local members of Congress will think twice about wanting a wing of joint strike fighters based in their region if doing so raises the VAT the region pays. We will appoint regional vice presidents from all parties based on which party wins the most electoral votes in that region. I will propose a constitutional amendment to allow each region to elect their leaders in the future. Federal property will be divided between the regions. However, native peoples will have the first dibs on land being held for them by the United States under treaty. They can either take it back and make private deals with any interest or ranchers using the land, although they may have to adopt the ranchers to avoid paying property taxes on it. They could continue to let the regional government administer the land, or they can sell it outright. Non-tribal land will be either distributed to the states or sold. Some functions will remain national in scope, for example, the space program. I will drastically increase funding for space exploration while cutting defense spending by at least as much. I am confident that most military members would rather go to space than go to war. Eventually, space infrastructure will be supported by the commercial sector, and government spending on aerospace can mostly be suspended. So who should support me? If you want less pork barrel spending, you should support me. If you want a secure retirement, you should support me. If you want families to have adequate income and less need of abortion services, you should support me. If you want to shift the social welfare system from creating a low-wage workforce to an empowered citizenry with strong families, you should support me. If you want nonviolent drug offenders to get treatment and all nonviolent marijuana users to be released immediately and pardoned, you should support me. If you want to see the rapid rise in healthcare costs to stop, you should support me. If you want your retirement savings to enable you to control your workplace rather than working for the 1%, you should support me. If you want to turn the rich into peace advocates and want to see the debt paid off, you should support me. If you want government to be closer to you, you should support me. If you want to enable native peoples to stand on their own rather than as wards of the government, you should support me. If you want safe food and strong family farms, you should support me. If you want empowered workers, you should support me. If you want to be able to buy a ticket to go to space for more than a few minutes, you should support me. If you want peace, you should support me. If you want the White House to quit ignoring progressive issues and liberty issues, you should send a message to them by supporting me. If you want an orderly transition to liberty, you should support me. If you want Americans elect to go away and not be a spoiler on either side, you should support me as if I am the only candidate who emerges from this stage of the process. I believe the organizers will pull the plug. If you want to know more about my ideas, you can read my blogs at http://xinleft.blogspot.com and fiscalequity.blogspot.com, as well as on my Facebook pages. There's one for each blog. Thank you for listening and giving me your support.